late ticket sales.
Yeah.
It's a great money spinner.
It is. Yeah.
And you only have to pay one person, being the person running production.
I'll come back in, by the way, if it finishes. Not thanks to jump off.
Oh, that was enjoying that. This is a lady I emailed back. Oh, it was
Sure, I can get a synopsis.
language, so I use some back.
That's what I said to
It varies. Yeah. Speak the language that people use, otherwise they might not understand. Yeah. Yeah. I was paying compared
We
to
are live for the information session. All right, team.
Just
Floor is yours.
Thanks very much. Okay, we've got a team member online as well, so he can chip in, Peter Rogers, if something comes up on the network side of things. We've got our team here responding to a notion of motion that was passed by the council, but was presented by Councillor Cartwright to them. That was unanimous that staff were requested to come and share information of where we're up to and what sort of options to gain a shared understanding around the possibilities of essentially making Memorial Ave a more user-friendly in all ways section from Greers Road to Clyde Road. We're obviously all aware of the congestion that's on there at the moment and probably most of the issues, so it's just a chance to make sure that we're able to share where we're up to with some of the findings and then what the outlook look like and where options might go. The community board can consider that and decide where it wants to go.
That's great.
So perhaps we'll introduce the team here first. If you,
my name's Andy Milne, team leader asset planning. Yep, and I've just been in the background and I might be able to answer any questions as we chew through this. We've got Yoni from real-time traffic operations, and Yoni can give us an insight into how the signals are set up and how we might be able to get anything out of them or not through that corridor.
Oh, great. Great to have you all. Thank you very much for coming.
okay, well, so we're after a shared understanding to move forward. So really, I thought I would start with this as sort of a suggested agenda, really. So we'll get down to discussions and direction. We'll try and get there as quickly as we can. If there's anything specifically that you feel like we've moved on too quickly on, or you want to just get clarity, by all means, but we'll try and keep some room for that discussion. And we can always loop back in the discussion. So clearways essentially are a way of temporarily creating an extra lane, and there's examples all over the city of where they've been working. Some are working really well. Some areas have specific issues to them, with tow trucks having to come in. Often that's in shopping areas where you've got people that are unused to parking there. Generally around residential areas, slightly better recognition, but you always allow for the odd visitor to learn the rules.
Yep.
They do rely on compliance for optimal results.
Well, for the clearway on Cranford Street,
Capital Road.
there have been over 260 instances where they've had to go and take the cars away through non-compliance. So
Is that reduced over time?
I don't know. I dig up what happened in the last year. So that's a question I asked, and that's the answer.
Okay. Because you would imagine over time, the initial incidences would be residents and visitors of residents, and then over time, the residents would reduce the occurrence of that because they would find themselves on the wrong end of it, and then over time they'd probably, hey, don't park here between these to their friends as well, right?
Told, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. It would get expensive. The photo there is actually of the current clearway operating in Memorial Ave, and as you can see, one of the residents is just parked up on the boom to rather than being on the clearway.
Yep.
It's just outside by the supermarket. So we're looking at it in the wider context of Memorial Ave in this section, and it's approximately 2 kilometres long, but it crosses over, as you know, 3 main intersections that are very significant on the network as well. So, you know, there's a balancing act at each of those intersections to ensure that they're optimising and as efficient and safe as they can be. And we can go into that a little bit more about the optimisation levels and what's the current situation is in those and how they're set up. But we'll shift on for now. This is showing the sorts of volumes that are running through. Now, this is based on an old count, but it's very similar now, and we're due to get some new counts very shortly.
We thought we'd get them this morning, but they're not in yet.
We did pop out there and do some cycle counts just the one day, and you're looking at about 350 to 380 cyclists movements within this. There's a little less as you get towards Clyde Road, but still over the 300, and a little more when you get near the schools.
Would that be the count during the proposed clearway times, or is that total per day?
That was a one day, and it was a video, so it's only the daytime as well. But also looked at how many are on the having to use, if you like, or choosing to use the footpaths, and that increases with primary school children and quite a few secondary school as well. Yeah. We can break it down into those peak times and pull that information out. And that just gives you a heat map of people who are on Strava, which isn't everyone, but that shows the cycling relativity. And as you can see, the brighter the lines is the higher the use for cycle trips. That's over a year, so they've just grabbed data and thrown that across the city.
It's quite cool.
Yeah, and so you can see pleasingly some of the major cycle routes showing up, and Memorial Ave obviously is featuring quite strongly there as well. So it's quite nice to see, you know, what the actual overall, but again, you've got to qualify this a little bit, that it might represent 25% of users, it might only represent 6 or 7% of users. There are people who have got a Strava.
Is that bright red one in the middle to the right of the screen, is that Jeffreys Road?
Yep.
That is this road just out here, isn't it? That's one of the brightest ones on the...
The scale goes to white, so
what's
darker
more
the
higher
colour.
use? Is white higher use?
Yes.
It is, okay. Okay, sorry, I thought it was the other way around. I thought it was coincidental, but okay.
Anyway, it just gives you a picture of what's happening out there in the network. But again, it comes down to the two fundamental elements. And we've heard comment, we've got a bottleneck, we've got double lanes, we've got the single lane in the middle. Obviously, you know, the logic would suggest, well, look, let's put another lane through. And that is a factor, but on its own, it's not a major factor. And if the intersections aren't geared up to cater for that and be able to, in a lot of ways, what we're doing is creating a parking space for cars in the road that they would have just been lined up in a longer line somewhere back up the road from that. And that's not a bad thing either if that's part of what you want to achieve. So I'm just saying, look, if we get one thing working 100%, you still need to work with the other thing to release those benefits as much.
The intersections we've currently identified at a point where they could handle that.
Sorry.
So when we talk about causing you know, more congestion around, you know, side streets effectively. So with exactly what we're talking about here, would Island Road intersection be fine to have two-way traffic?
2 lane.
2 lanes, sorry. Two
Yes,
lane
it already
traffic.
is at the moment.
Yeah, it is, but
Yeah.
then it goes back to obviously a single lane between Island.
Or on
and
the other
Glen-
side as you
Yeah,
go
on the other
through.
side.
Yeah, again, those things have to be assessed and looked at specifically to work out what sort of tailback lanes you're creating, whether that gets in the way of things and or whether that's an acceptable cost for making it more efficient in another direction. Absolutely. Possibly, Yoni, do you want to add anything about how those intersections generally are, perhaps the saturation estimates or optimization at the moment?
It kind of go hand in hand with your next bit as well, which is the lane use at the intersection.
We want to just flick to that and talk to that, or do you want
Yeah,
to?
you might be, yeah, on the next one that you got there.
Slide.
Yeah, because at the moment, we only have a straight through lane in the centre, and then the left one becomes a left and through. What the issue is with other places is that not many people would like to use the left-hand lane because they might get blocked by the left turnout when there's a pedestrian crossing the road on the side road and the first cars turn left, of course. It's always my bad luck in Glendowie Road or at Struan Road, you know, that four-way intersection is like, oh no, one turn left. So I guess from what I can see from the intersection, about 1 out of 10 cars would go in there and I go, oh no, and then they would never do that again. I'll always stick to the right hand side of the road because this is just a waste of time, and another 11 seconds of my life gone there. So there's kind of like it's just a bad experience, and they go, I won't be using that. Same as like Cranford Street at Innes Road. There are 2 through lanes, but the left one is the shared turn left thing, and then people go, I don't want to do that. I want to stay kind of in the middle and just carry straight through. And then after intersection, they will move over to the left-hand side, kind of like about 90% of the capacity isn't being used due to that. So it's like a design thing. We really need to have like sorry.
So you hit 90%, but you said 1 in 5 cars might be turning left. So that's only 20%. Or 80%.
The first car,
Yeah.
you know, you get a good, you know, 1 in 5 car, for example, will turn left in the first one, and then you get stuck, you know, behind it.
Yeah. But then it self-regulates because the intersection you're talking about, Glendowie Road,
Yes.
Struan.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And heading into town.
Yes.
So, because I go through that intersection 2, if not 3 times a day.
Yes.
And I know that if somebody's turning left and there's a pedestrian,
That's right.
that they've got to wait.
Yeah.
because we've
Exactly. Yeah.
got red arrows there.
That's right.
Which is mind-boggling. But because the phrase is too long. But then yes, as you're right, you can't move as you either wait patiently or you go to the right. But that's more the exception, not the rule. So it's about trying to get traffic moving down the road better. So we basically have the capacity to do it, don't we? Is that what I'm hearing?
What I was trying to explain was that if we had the road width to have a separate left turn lane and 2 straight through lanes and a right turn lane, they'll complete the whole package of what we're trying to design here.
Yeah, but we don't have that.
No, exactly. Yeah.
So, but if because you can, so on that photo there, you can still see a straight. Oh no, that's not the photo I've got. I'm talking about Greers Road. I've got Memorial and Island.
Yeah.
So Memorial and Island.
Yeah.
So that's so on because the town end of that is where it would finish, doesn't it? Or no, it starts at the Island heading towards the park, heading towards the airport, as we were talking about.
Both of them had the left is a left and through, and then the middle lane is a through lane, and same as on the other approach of Memorial. But the same scenario will come up when the first car turns left and you get stuck behind it. So it's not a, you know, like a perfect solution. Even we've got 2 lanes straight through approaching the intersection, we still have that kind of like a shy scenario here. Yeah.
We're never gonna solve that because the road's not wide enough.
No,
Yeah,
we.
yeah.
Not with the lane width we've
Not
got.
fine, but
Yeah.
yeah.
And there's no capacity to go wider anyway.
No.
Boom's not that wide there.
Last I heard, the property around there's not cheap either, so.
Yeah.
So we could still bring in the clearway, but the public just have to understand that if you're in the left-hand lane going through there, that on the odd occasion, 1 in 5, so like 20% of the time, there's going to be a delay.
Yeah.
For a period of time when there is.
It's not illogical. Once you've been delayed once or twice, you won't go back in there. If there's a car in front of you and it hasn't even put its indicator on, why would you? You just stay in the lane, and that's what's happening. Like people, and there's also, because they're really short mergers afterwards, people don't like it. And, you know, it's like crushing everyone back together really quickly. It's uncomfortable, and it's less uncomfortable if you stay in the straight through lane, and a lot of people choose it for that. Sadly at peak time, obviously, but on the plus side, there's lots of kids walking to school and they're pressing the button. So it might even be, you know, more than 1 in 5, or the 1 in 5 is, as you say, an extended wait. Sorry, probably jumping through a bit, but I was hoping we might cover some of the how those. I mean, we have the information to present about where roughly the saturation levels are on those intersections, and they're all operating quite high, and their efficiency is reasonably high as well. Taking into account also that you know, the improvements for the right turning signals to give that turn as well is an attractive option to a lot of the public as well. So, and they take up part of that efficiency time when you're looking at purely movement through. If we just put in the mid-block clearway or an equivalent of it, there are a number of other issues that came up from that previous study in 2019 of looking at the options, and it went through the clearway options, and it was under the optimization corridor study, which was looking at, if you like, the most efficient way of shifting vehicles around. And the safety audits that were coming back to its earlier ones of, you know, part-time and just let's look at putting it in, were raising issues that needed to be addressed that then started increasing some of the costs. For example, currently there's a 3 metre curbside through lane and left turn, one of the approaches to the intersection here. And at the moment, it's not overly utilised by vehicles tracking through, which allows cyclists to have some measure of buffering from the rest of the traffic. If we're funneling traffic through there efficiently and everyone's going through there, there is no space for cyclists. They simply won't be provided safely for.
Are you talking this intersection here?
Yeah.
So you're talking heading to the airport?
Yeah.
And that if both lanes of traffic are in use, where you're like 3 o'clock on a after school, people heading to, or going out to the airport in the morning, whatever, are you saying that the cyclists don't have enough room? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Would that be a little? Would the width would be the same size as what they've got in most other roads, though, wouldn't it?
Depends what the volumes of vehicles are that you're pushing through there. And it's a level of discomfort and levels of safety, and they're on a large span. So it's just really how far can you push out before it becomes unacceptable. And there's obviously a safety audit system in place that will look at that and make some determinations.
Having a clearway at that intersection though, wouldn't change anything apart from the way it is now, right? Like there's no change, like when you talk about the cyclists, there's no change to what it's currently like with it being a clearway, except that potentially more cars are going to use that because it's called a clearway. Because you can still go straight through on that left lane.
If we go back to this gives the sorts of widths we're looking at the moment. So it's not the same as obviously the other sections that are leading into it. They have a curb to curb of 22 metres wide. What we're dealing with at the moment is a 15 metre curb to curb for the section that we're looking at. So if we're just looking at trying to get in one side in a clearway, you're cutting that 4.5 up into 2, 3, well, and you're getting rid of obviously the roadside parking. So it starts dropping what's available. On a road like this with 11% on average heavy vehicles, which is your camper vans and trucks, the preference is 3.5 wide for operational use. There's currently a 2 metre medium, which is fine because cars park poorly when they're turning. And so in this case, if you park poorly and you've got 2 lanes that are less than 3.5, it is a lot less forgiving environment. And the people that are sitting on the median are trying to make a call of getting through 2 lanes of traffic to get to their driveway, or this section, because it hasn't got a built median of 4 metres like the other section, which allows for the safety for people who are able to go into, if you like, an island to wait for a very clear opportunity to turn into a mid-block or a driveway.
Okay, so that's a great thing here, and I'm learning lots on this.
Yeah.
So if my maths is correct, so that's 6, 8. And here, if you added 4 on that, you're going to get 7, 6, 5, so it's 300 metres difference, right? 6, 5, 6.5.
Yep.
If you add those two together, so it's only difference by 300 mil,
Yeah.
right? But you got a 2 metre medium, which is in the bulk of where we're talking about is painted.
Yeah, it is only painted.
Why can't we take that down to 1?
They
And
looked
then-
at
and
that.
then- and then you're
Yep,
actually giving
absolutely.
them more than here.
Absolutely, and the study looked at that in 2019 and came up with the difficulties for people who wanted to use it. So
Turn
anyone,
right into a driveway.
driveway usage, it is used by pedestrians around by the schools. So that study identified the need for a refuge island, and that's still sitting waiting to go in the minor safety budget at the moment.
Okay, but that's only at peak time though, isn't it? Because if we were going to do more the clearway, but it's not a permanent clearway all the time. So if you're heading to the airport, what's the suggested time frame that we were looking at there?
Well, there's variations depending on what period you want to capture, but yeah, there's a morning of sorts of a peak heading there, and then there's also an afternoon.
I would think is worse.
Yeah.
Or busier. And then, because would you have a clearway one side of the road on the morning and the other side of the afternoon? Would you go like that? Or are you thinking clearway on that section of road consistent across both sides? But that would be the thing. What's your thinking there?
Yeah, look, again, that's the study, and sorry, that it was attached to the report, but that came in and showed the shortcomings of doing a clearway without looking at creating more space still. There are a few pinch points like down by the supermarket, it gets even a little bit narrower. It also looked at the difficulties of a 2 metre wide and needed to retain a 2.5 metre for turning traffic into the supermarket. But it also recognised that you would be getting a lot of rear end accidents in the current setup of the northern side of Memorial Ave as you're coming towards town, without reducing it to a single lane as it's going through past the turning lane into the mall. So there are a number of issues that make it really tricky to be able to put in and keep a good safety level there. The flush median is a huge factor in trying to make these scenarios work. You also find in those sections that have been designed for double laning that median has cut some of the options for smaller streets entering in. So we may need to look at closing some of the movement options for some of the smaller local roads coming into the street, because at peak time, if they're trying to cross over and head across 3 lanes and having less of a median and less forgiveness, if you like, because we're maximising the use of that space for moving vehicles, there are issues.
So if we were in Auckland, God forbid, would they, because the last time I was up there, they just cram people on their roads. So you talk about these sort of safety measures. Are ours more restrictive or prohibitive in cross use than, let's say, somewhere like Auckland? Or do we work under the same standards?
We do work under a national set of standards, absolutely. And it's variable depending on some of the cities in different areas. You could argue that Christchurch is a lot more encouraging and supportive of a wider use on the roads with active transport, and that shows up. They're looking at 1 or 2% as a cycling number, whereas we're sitting at 6 or 7%. So it really is also left if you like, a theme for a council of where they want to head.
I'm all for safety, but I'm also for efficient, traffic flows and trying to see how we can make it work.
Absolutely. And that's what the 219 study did look through, a lot of those early options and started putting them and throwing them around and putting some widths on them. It was only a draft, as in it never completed itself because its funding went past what they were expecting. It really did start focusing on things like the intersections to try and get some of those savings in time by turning them into larger intersections.
So where does it? Because am I correct in sort of assuming maybe some reservation in going forward with this?
We are at a stage where it's still indicative, but some of the signals are quite strong. And what we do know is that the intersections are a decider and they're working at close to optimal. We could put in some extra use of the mid-law, but there are serious ramifications from that. And there really didn't appear from the earlier studies to be, if you like, a easy option to maximise more than what we've got. At the moment, it may not appear to be working as well as the other sections, but by adding a clearway, it may not work much better than what it is currently.
How, if we went ahead with a clearway,
Yeah.
how difficult is it to reverse the clearway? So-
Just pull the signs out.
Yeah, so because sometimes it's the case of like, you can do all the modelling in the world and it gets you to within a certain point of view, a certain perspective, and then really the only real way to find out what the true effects will be to actually do it. And if it's something that you can do, which is easily reversible, sometimes you should bias towards doing it and finding out, because it's really easy to reverse that situation. Whereas if we're saying we're ripping up all of this stuff, we're pulling out all this, we're spending hundreds of thousands on repainting X, Y, and Z, we've got to make all these intersection changes, and then we find out it doesn't work, well then we get caught out and you look a bit silly. But if it's a situation that can be easily reversed, then it may be worth, actually proving out. And then that way you're like, yep, this is exactly what we thought would happen. We gave it a crack.
So
Told you so. You guys get to climb up on your high horse and say we told you so, and then we have to go back and have a look at. You wouldn't do that. You're far too modest. Then we would have to go back and say, well, okay, what the second question would be, what would need to be true to actually improve that section of road, and does that all of a sudden become, okay, this work needs to be done on this intersection, this one needs to be on this intersection, this needs to be done here, we need to take this much of the curb, the grass lane and all of these needs to go back, it's going to cost us $15 million, and then the council needs to make transport funding decisions around how much of a priority that is. Like, is that what that would look like from your perspective?
It looks tempting that you could dip your toe in. I can see that and see, with some paint and give it a trial. This isn't that project, to be fair. In the previous project had looked through the widths and put up the drafts to a safety auditor, and they also looked at how to get the benefits. If you got it moving at 100% through those intersections, which would essentially be carving out the side of the intersections with construction and putting through 2 straight lanes and having a specialised left turn and a specialised right turn at each approach, and took the departure lane and ran it all the way through to the next signalised intersection, which you'd do the same thing too. Very, very ballpark. With the intersections operating as efficiently as they can, you might save somewhere, it's estimated, and this is really generic, and it was just, haven't spent a lot of funding on doing the modelling, but at the moment, based on the old model, because there's a new model coming in 2025, but anyway, cutting it all short, there could be a 30-second savings over that 2 kilometres.
So next question from me. So if you say in the next 20 to 30 to 40 years, Christchurch population grows by X, is the traffic on that road ever going to get better? And if it's not, and it's only going to get worse, what would your plan be to resolve that? If it's only ever going to get worse, like what is the solution, or is there not one? And it's always, is it build a bridge, build a tunnel? What would you do if you're trying to solve it?
The solution is not necessarily to create more capacity, right? It's been shown that when you create capacity,
So more people on bikes and buses,
it just gets sucked up. Right, more vehicle capacity, and so that is the answer: is how do we encourage folks to not use a car and come in a different way, such as a bus?
That's one side of the argument. The other side of the argument, from the commuter's point of view, is at least I'm trying to get home and it's busy, but I've got my own lane. So it's a bit of it's counter, and I get, and it might be counterintuitive, but from speaking with my own personal experience, at least if I'm coming down Park Terrace and I've got 2 lanes and both of them might be full, but actually I know that I'm moving in the right direction. If it's stifled, like where the current bike thing is, and you go, well, I've only got one lane and it's jammed, and can potentially see all of this asphalt over here, where for all intents and purposes I can put my car down. Emotionally, I'm really going, well, we should be doing it. So 30 seconds.
You're right, and again,
for 2K, it's not a bad saving. It's quite good, and we're talking about efficiencies. We're talking about effectiveness. So I'm all for it. I was just on Google Maps, so I like the idea of maybe doing bite sizes. I don't know if Aidan can bring up Google Maps on your machine, and we do the area. Can you do? Because I know that notice motion was like that whole 2K stretch, but if we look at where are we there? If you go further north, please, or towards the airport. Yep, keep going a little bit, please, Aidan. Yep. So if we did go take that back up the screen a bit. Yep, stop. Perfect. So even if we just said this bit here as a trial, where is that? Oh, in the street to Island Road, because you've still got your intersections and stuff here, and you did, yep, that's great, that works. And then you might go, okay, that worked, we've got some lessons out of it, there's no accidents, cyclists feeling safe, residents are going, yep, I'm getting home earlier for my dinner, or I'm getting to the airport, I'm not missing flights. And then you go, okay, and then we go, and I don't know, Aidan, if you can move it from, and just take that a little bit up that way, and you go, no, yep, perfect. And then you go, oh, okay, well, let's try that clear way along this bit. And over the process of, let's say, 6 months, well, maybe that might be too ambitious, maybe over a year or so, that we actually just do bite size, and the public will learn, they'll grow with it, and they'll do things. Can we do that? Are we clever enough to do that?
I don't think it's a matter of cleverness. I think with that example, unless you've changed the intersection, what you're doing is adding to parking. And as you say, people may feel like they may be moving a little bit further because they're sitting in a double lane. That's the section where around the peak hour you've got a lot of parents and people crossing mid-block. It's been observed. So
across the King's School, across the road.
Potentially that drops the safety, and you've got to start looking at how you're going to move people across there.
But it's not. But we're not changing anything on the road, because they're not going to jaywalk, because that's what they don't do, because they'll go up, because it is heavy traffic, so they use the lights. So there's no cost. You'd still, the existing painted lines still won't have to be changed. The run through at the other end is permanently 2 lanes, so that the path out. So I'm talking more about heading towards the airport. I'm not really thinking too much about coming into town here. I'll have to think about that in a bit. But that at least gets, and it might only be that we do the clearway on that side of the road. What's that? That's north. That might be the south side of the road, and we just do a little wee sort of suck it and see type scenario. And so like, there might not be a perfect solution, but what I'm really keen to try something is just go, hey, what can we do? And if it's paint, then we can paint it out, and it's a post with a sign, and we just get rid of the sign, and people will go, oh, yep. And the community, our community, will see that we've actually tried, and then they'll do it.
There's an appetite to try something. A question from me, you might not be able to answer this, but this might be something which might be answered in the future. You mentioned around modal change. It would be good to understand what proportion of the population would need to change mode to reduce the demand on the network, to the point where you would see a reduction in traffic volumes on a road like this. Because it would be useful for two factors, for the counter argument on a discussion like this, and also this is where you need to get to from a network growth, from a public transport perspective, to actually make an impact on congestion in certain parts of town. Because if we're saying, okay, to the modal change that we require to have an impact on congestion across the city would require a 10% of the population or 15% of the population using public transport on a regular basis. If that was the case now, that would require a public transport network that was 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 2 times the size that we currently have. That would be really useful information to have, especially in conversations like that. Now, I don't like this particular one. I don't know if there's any information that's out there about that right now, but it would be very useful, because it's useful to say, well, we want to see X because that's our only rule. That might be the only option we have, but that's kind of, there's a whole lot of buts and questions and behind that around the practicality of that as a solution as well. It'd be really good to have the modelling of what that looks like, to go, oh yeah, that's rock solid, that's the best we've got. When we're trying to, solution, what do you call legacy transport.
Could we come back and go, here's 10 ideas, and one of those ideas being piecemeal is part of it, not as the whole 2K, and actually go, oh, here's an idea, it might only be one side of the road as a clearway. So it's not a perfect solution to and from town or to and from the airport, but it might be actually, we can only do it and it's only going to be effective on one side of the road. Does that make sense? Oh, am I making myself clear?
Yeah, just with one direction as opposed to both.
Yeah, you might just go priority to airport or priority to town, and we can do a clearway just on one side of the road.
If that's where the board wants to head, I think what we've looked at, you're wanting to head towards improving the congestion issues through there and speed it up. We're saying to you, if you spent a huge amount and widened out the intersections to make it almost to the point where, really, would you want to do that in front of a school by adding another 3 meters of road and having a 1.5 meter footpath left so that you can make the clearway work 100% efficient? What do you want to do with the buses when they stop at their stops? Do they take up the whole clearway? Or are you going to pay to indent them and put them on the berm as well? And then for the cyclists that are using that carriageway and have got a little bit of room to squeeze themselves through at the moment, you've pushed them off the road because you've squeezed the cars more into all those spaces. And to do that as an interim without safety in place, and to say, oh, we're moving towards something and we just want to be seen to be doing something, that is your prerogative, but we would need to obviously take that through and say to you, where do you want this to head?
Yep.
And that is assuming, because at peak time, you're still going to get the odd, well, there will be impediments as in trying to get, people who are walking will need to go to a signalised crossing to get across and feel safe. And all this happens at peak time. Sadly, peak time often for all the multi-modes and the buses as well. So you need to absolutely weigh all that up before you decide it's a good idea to throw some paint on the ground for, 6 months and see how it goes.
Okay, good to know. And consideration of time.
Yeah.
Keen to wrap it up.
Yep, I agree.
I've done.
Thank you.
It's good. It's been very informative.
To bring good news and say, look, there's this absolute golden opportunity and it just needs a bit of paint. But as a council, there's a number of commitments.
We need patience to learn more patience.
Because
a sky bridge.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not. Probably my appetite for risk is probably higher than some.
Could well be.
Yeah, those intersections are terrible, the Breas Road, the kids coming in if you push things like
But
that.
using that as this argument, you get rid of the one in Norwood Road, because as we talked about earlier, people stop there and that 1 in 5 person inconveniences everybody else. So therefore we should get rid of every turning lane in the city or a dual lane. And they should only ever have one direction. That's where the argument goes.
Speaking of traffic, a green arrow turning right onto Graham's Road would be great. Memorial. The Graham's Road? No, what's the one right there? Memorial onto
We've got one turning right from where?
Memorial, turning right down.
Into Graham's.
The Graham's or Graham's? Oh, it's Graham. It's a real Graham. I had to do that a couple of times because of the other roadworks recently, and I was like, oh no. Anyway.
But anyway, look,
Yeah.
I'm going to keep on scratching my head.
I'm going to show you the spot.
Absolutely, and if there is something,
If I come to you, maybe some other suggestions by email.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, but I see what
Yeah.
I need to intersect, making those intersection changes around our schools, that would be a real danger, I think.
Yeah. See, I just sort of think the one coming out of let's talk about, Stranraer. I mean, I'm reiterate.
Right, should we let these guys go, or we're going to have a discussion around the table while they just sit here and listen?
Traffic coming home down Memorial.
Just sit here and listen.
Traffic coming home down Memorial Avenue now, we'll just